The Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Red from the Kaito and Red Show, Sang H, Mike from the Old Switcheroo podcast, Parallax Puddles, Pib Extra, Melissa S, Ryan K, Matt aka Stormageddon, Doug from the Nostalgia Marcanon podcast, Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Gilmer, Stephen P, and Mr. Biscuits have all been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of an episode, along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out everything it has to offer. On this episode of Still Loading, for those not watching the video version of this, I promise our outfits are made entirely of blue terry cloth. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today's episode, it is episode 400 of the Still Loading podcast. That's right. It's been over 10 years of podcasting, 399 mainline previous episodes, along with bonus episodes and freaking movie podcast, Patreons, and all that other stuff. But we are here for episode 400. And as I've been doing the last couple years for mile marker episodes, whether it was the 10-year anniversary episodes I did a few back in 2024 or the Hundo episodes, I've been trying to highlight things that have helped my podcast become what it is. When I did the 10th anniversary one, I interviewed a bunch of my fellow podcasters and content creators about their personal journeys since they helped me with mine. And I'm kind of continuing that trend here a little bit. Joining me for episode 400, he is an actor, an improviser, a fellow podcaster, been created so many podcasts that I can't even list, but some of my personal favorites: James Bonding, Pistol Shrimps Radio, Mallwalkin, Superego, Bonanas, not Bananas, Bonanas for Bonanza, Keys to the Kingdom, and of course, probably his most popular podcast that he is a part of right now, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. Matt Gourley is here on the podcast today. Matt, how are you doing?
Hi, Josh. Thanks for having me for the big 400th. I feel flattered, and I hope I provide.
You've already knocked it out of the park. It's only been 2 minutes, and we're already there. So don't worry.
I've said nothing. I've done nothing.
That's okay. I don't know. I've already lost the thread of how I'm going to steer this back, so I'm just going to do an awkward transition and move this right in.
Okay.
You wouldn't know I've been podcasting for 10 years with transitions like that. You would think I've been doing it for, I don't know. Anyway.
I've lost my complete ability to transition, so please.
I always find it's easier to transition when you call out how bad the transition is, and then automatically it's a good transition. As long as
it's a transition, no doubt. Whether it's good or bad, you can't deny it's a transition. So well done.
You cannot. And man, this has been a long one. So I want to start off, Matt, with some basic questions. Questions you probably get a lot, but for my audience who may not know the work you do, you've been podcasting for over 20 years. Superego started in 2006. It's celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. In fact, this episode will come out after it, but you have a live show coming up for Superego's 20th anniversary, which is very exciting. So right. I want to know, how did you first get into podcasting? What kind of like how did you first hear about it? What kind of sparked the inspiration for starting your own? How did you first get involved?
Well, I had been doing this series of short films for this film. It was kind of like an internet TV festival called Channel 101. It was a monthly thing where you would submit a fake 5-minute pilot to a show that didn't exist that you made up. And there would be a live screening every month. And if the audience liked it, they would vote 5 of them like series order. Like, we want to see next month what the next episode is. So Jeremy Carter, who I co-created Superego with, we were doing these, videos, and just setting ourselves up for failure in terms of production values and stuff like that, because we just never half-assed anything. And this was right around the time after we had finished a run with a little show on Channel 101 we called Ultra Force, based off of the movie Megaforce, that I started becoming aware of podcasts, and I had started listening to the Ricky Gervais podcast. I think I was listening to Fresh Air and maybe even the podcast audio feed of Meet the Press or something while I was painting my house. I'm trying to remember. Excuse me. And it occurred to me that this medium would be perfect because there's no production value. So that's a win right there. We can do all the comedy we want to do. And what I didn't foresee as being an added bonus was that the listener got to make up the production values in their head. And so I pitched it to Jeremy. We tossed a couple of different ideas around and then eventually came up with Superego, which is just super loose character improvisation, no rules in the recording, and then in the editing it's highly edited and sound designed almost to sound as if it was meant to be that way, even though the amount of absurdity and non sequitur that happened there in the first place still finds its way in. So it's this, you know, for better or worse, this unique combination of that kind of thing, and then that's just how it started. And
you've been podcasting ever since.
I'm embarrassed to say I have.
You should not be embarrassed. It's become like, it's kind of crazy to think about, like, now, like, you know, if you think back, I would say like pre 2015 podcasting was still relatively unknown. Now it's a juggernaut. Like, there is no reason to be embarrassed by it now, because podcasts are, like, for better or worse, in some cases worse, as we've seen with some of the podcast bros, that has a lot more influence than I think a lot of people would have ever expected.
Yeah, certainly.
So I first discovered you through James Bonding. That was my first show, and for a long while, and it still is in my top 5. It was like my favorite podcast. Just period. I loved besides just like the fun nature of it, like picking fun at Bond, and while also obviously being a huge fan of the franchise, but it was also just the atmosphere that you and Myra were able to create. So I guess, like, my question is, how I would assume it's dependent on the show, but for less produced shows, things that are more kind of like more off the cuff, whether it's James Bonding, whether it's more comedy based, like Pistol Shrimps or something like that, how do you kind of like find the overall tone for the podcast when you're kind of crafting it?
I think with Superego, Jeremy and I had both had a childhood history of improvising into cassette recorders for no good reason. So we immediately just connected on an unspoken level with that idea. And then same with Mark and Jeff Crocker, and then Paul F. Tompkins, who came along later. And now Andy Daly and James Bladen are in the group for the 20th anniversary. We all just, it was unspoken, I think. And then James Bonding, I had not known Matt Myra, but we did a kind of like mock experts table discussion on Attack of the Show about James Bond when Skyfall came out. And that's how we met. And we went to see Skyfall together, and it was kind of like this fun little podcaster's first date. And then he pitched the idea of doing this thing. And then I'm trying to remember, the title came from Doug. I Love Movies, Doug.
Doug Benson.
Doug Benson came up with the idea of James Bonding. And then we just thought, very loose format, let's see where it goes. And, you know, I always tell people this as like my role of consultant or producer of podcasters. I've had jobs in the past and currently do, even with the Conan show, that if you're trying to develop a podcast, it's a great idea to just do 3 and burn them. Don't even put them out, because you're not going to even know what your rhythms and kind of style is going to be until you find it. So we just found it on the way, and it, you know, I almost think James Bonding is kind of a lack of format. It really is just talking about the movies, and wherever it goes, it goes. And luckily there's a niche enough audience. Same with the podcast I have with Paul Rust called With Gourley and Rust. We talk about,
I forgot to mention that. I actually have listened to that too.
Well, that one we talk about horror movies all the time, but it's also just us on tangents. We call them opening tabs and closing tabs, like on a web browser. Yeah. So that works for some people as listeners, and it doesn't for others. So it's not for everyone. And then, you know, something like Superego is so tight and concise, it really runs the spectrum. I couldn't tell you. And then Pistol Shrimps Radio was just an idea I had after my wife started playing in women's rec league basketball, and I know nothing about sports. So I grabbed my friend Mark and I said, let's do play-by-play commentary. We'll go live to the games and record it during the games, and let's just see what happens. And that, again, of course, was just a launching pad for absurdity. Same with Mallwalkin.
It's funny. I actually on Pistol Shrimp specifically. So I've listened to not all of it. I've listened to, in fact, I first started listening to it about 3 months before you stopped. And
wow.
Then I was like, literally like 3 months beforehand. And then I was like, oh, that's a bummer. I'll go back and listen to some of the older ones. And I've been slowly going through it. So one thing I have not gotten to yet, but I know comes around at some point. What's the origins of Free Throw Scriptures? Because I have not gotten to its discovery yet, like of how you guys kind of came to be.
I don't know if it's anything more complicated than what do we talk about during free throws, because there's like long pauses. Let's just use this as a time to do some made up Bible scriptures like we kind of used to do in Superego in the first season. We did these preacher characters. God, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know.
See, my theory, without knowing, was that when they're going down to free throw, they're very solemn in the way they look. They put their head down and they're like dribbling. It kind of looks like they're about to get ready to pray, or they are praying. Like in some.
You may be right.
That is
it also gets very quiet in the auditorium when normally people are cheering and stuff. This is a time when everybody hushes up. So we probably began with whisper scriptures or something like that. I don't know.
Whisper scriptures. So one kind of last basic question before I kind of get into some more in-depth stuff. How did you get involved with Conan's podcast? Because I had known you from James Bonding and your appearances on Comedy Bang Bang and all this other stuff. And then obviously once the podcast boom happened, every celebrity, and this is no offense to Conan, even though he won't listen to this, so it's fine.
Please offend him all you like.
But like when he got involved with it, and just to be clear, I genuinely love Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. Really fun. Like you and him have such a great rapport, just bickering back and forth with each other. It's great. But when I saw that you got involved with it, I was like, oh snap, like the person I've been listening to for this long is now on with Conan O'Brien. So how did that kind of come to be?
I had been working kind of on retainer as a consultant for the Earwolf podcast network, which in the beginning was just Earwolf, and then it was bought by a company called Stitcher and then Sirius. And so I would kind of occasionally help develop shows and, give ideas and contribute and stuff. And so when Adam Sachs, who used to run Earwolf, left, he took over at Team Coco as the kind of head of content, for lack of a better term. He and I are friends, and we had worked together. We had started an offshoot of the Earwolf podcast network called Wolf Pop, which is like pop culture based podcast. That's where I had a podcast called I Was There Too. And he and I had become very close. And he, I think, along with a fellow named Colin at Earwolf, decided as part of my retainership, it would be good to work on that. And I had kind of met with them, and just my understanding was I was going to help develop the pilot like I did with a number of other shows. So I came in with some ideas and built the structure of format of the show, even as it is today for the most part. And then slowly just became part of the show. I think I've said this before, but I probably, if they would have said to me, like, do you want to stay on as producer? I would have probably said no. I get a little scared of like career commitments and things like that. So I don't know if it was just the insight of Adam to say, let's just dole this out a piece at a time. And by then I was, helping more and having more rapport. And over time, just the job became too good to leave. And then the sibling rivalry became too, I guess, anti-therapeutic in a way. It's like a kind of outlet of, I don't know what to call it, but just learning my place in that dynamic between Conan, Sona, and me took a long time. But once we got there and it clicked, it's, been really fun.
Well, it's funny because like you talked about earlier on in the episode how, when you are advising on other podcasts or consulting, you always say, record the first 3 and just burn them. Like don't bother with them. And you're 100% right with that. I did not do that. That's why my earliest episodes are very rough. But it took. I tell my listeners who when the few times I've been asked to guest on other podcasts to talk about my podcasting journey, I say like the same thing. Like, it took me 10 years to realize what the hell this show is.
Right.
Now this is primarily a video game show. I remember you guested, because I listened to way too many podcasts, so hopefully this doesn't come off as weird that I have so many of these like random appearances of yours in like the Rolodex in my head. But like on Get Played, you mentioned you're not like, you don't play a lot of video games. You're not big.
Although I will say, Josh, lately.
Mm-hmm. Oh shit! Okay.
I bought a vintage Game Boy, and I've been, I've had a little more time on my hands with having come off a paternity leave. Well, while I was on paternity leave, but I bought a vintage Game Boy and snatched up some of the games.
That James Bond game I see there is good too. It's like a Zelda clone.
Yeah, I had never been aware of it. This was one I did not have when I was originally, like, I bought Game Boy when it came out, and I didn't even know about that. So I don't know if you want to get into this now or save it for later.
No, by all means, because I had, like I said in our correspondence, I have a list of questions. I'm not beholden to them. I like to go where the conversation takes us. And it's funny you bring them. I actually I've done panels on the history of James Bond in video games. And so I've done research going all the way back to the earliest one I found. And listeners, you've already heard this because I literally just recorded a live stream and released it a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago by the time this comes out. But like the earliest Bond game I found was for the ZX Spectrum over in the UK. And it was called Shaken Not Stirred. It was also unlicensed because they named, instead of Jaws, Bond fought Paws. Instead of Knick Knack, he fought Tic Tac. Like really kind of tongue-in-cheek stuff like that. But yeah, so I when doing research for it, I found that James Bond game. Like, this game is like the Game Boy game you held up there. Really cool game, like really worth it, or really fun to look into.
Yeah, my history with games can in some ways be sort of tied with the lineage of James Bond games, all the way back to the Commodore 64. I had The Spy Who Loved Me.
Okay.
And then I never had the James Bond game for the Sega Master System. I was not a Nintendo NES guy. I was a Sega guy. But I never even knew these James Bond games existed for Game Boy or Sega Master System.
There's a lot of like weird, obscure ones out there. Like, there's a couple text adventures. Like, if you played Zork or stuff like that, like there's a couple Bond text adventures.
I always liked those games.
No, it's crazy. Written by future Bond author Raymond Benson. He did.
That's right. I heard him talk about that in an interview. Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah. So he did those. He has a weird. I talked about him before. He has a weird, like, in and out of like games and Bond in like interesting way, because after he finished writing all his Bond novels and novelizations of the movies, he went on to do novelizations of video games throughout like the mid 2000s and stuff like that. Right. He also, I didn't know if this was going to come up. I was going to show this to you off mic if it didn't come up during the episode, but he also wrote a module for the James Bond tabletop RPG.
I think I have that, actually. I don't think I realized it was by Raymond Benson, but that looks very familiar to me.
This one is not. This is the main game. He wrote like an expansion pack of it, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it just kind of crazy how he's been in gaming and Bond in some way, shape, or form throughout his career, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But so you were saying you recently got back into playing Game Boy games, though.
Yeah, it's been a nice way for me to decompress. Like when my daughters go down, usually I'll get them ready for bed. We'll have some fun. And then my wife will kind of do like the last little push to kind of calm them down in bed. And that's when I'll relax for 10 minutes with a Game Boy game or something. Like Motocross Maniacs was one I had when I was a kid. Castlevania. Ooh. Tetris, Super Mario, Star Wars, and Batman were also ones I had. And then the new ones I got are this James Bond game and the Donkey Kong game too. But I don't know. It's not Donkey Kong Land. It's just Donkey Kong, right? Just Donkey Kong. Yeah. But it's
have you played it yet?
I have. I love it. It's like the arcade cabinet game, but with a ton of other variety of levels.
In the gaming community, we call that Donkey Kong 94 because it's not Donkey Kong.
Yes.
It starts out as Donkey Kong, and then it's completely different after that.
I love it. I'm only dipped my toe in the water of a lot of these new games, but this is proving to be so nostalgic, but also fun for me. And then the other thing going way back that I've been getting, because I used to have these when I was a kid, are the original Nintendo Game & Watch.
Oh my God. Those are beautiful.
So I
love
have
that.
Popeye and Mario Brothers, and I also have Donkey Kong Jr., but I can't find that one.
Those are worth something too, man. I've been like, I go to a lot of gaming conventions and they're hard to they're not hard to find, but they're always at least like over $100
they're not
get
cheap.
one again. No.
Yeah.
So that's great that you held on to
those give me such a dopamine hit of carrying, especially Donkey Kong Jr. I would carry that in my pocket every day to school. And even if I didn't play it, it was like a kind of security blanket for me or something. It really, oh man, it just fills me with a kind of rush of dopamine. I can't explain it.
No, I get it entirely. Nostalgia is like, it's one of the reasons I started the podcast, is just talking about things I'm nostalgic for with gaming specifically, just because they're always so tied with such like, a specific time and place. Like you just told the story about how you took that Donkey Kong Jr. to school every day. So now you're picturing that time in your life of like whatever age you were when you were going to school with that. So I totally understand that. For me, I'm a bit younger than you. So like the thing I brought to school, I didn't have handhelds. My parents were super religious. They weren't against video games. I've talked about this before. Like, but I grew up in the middle of Pokemania in the mid to late 90s. But my parents wouldn't let me get the games at the time. Once I got older, they were fine, but they were skeptical because Pokemon Evolve and evolution.
Yeah, man, they're really hanging on a technicality there, huh?
Oh my God, were they? It was something special. But I still think back to those times with a lot of nostalgia, even with it wasn't technically part of the Satanic Panic because it wasn't D&D related, but I'm kind of lumping all that together with the
I get it. Panic. Yeah. I know. I have such a nostalgia too for the Sega Master System, so much so that I don't even want to get an emulator to play the games. I want to get the console because I'm embarrassed to admit that I think I chose that one over Nintendo because I liked the way the console looked on top of my TV. It just is black and maroon. It was so gorgeous looking there. And now I want another one. I want to have it in my studio here. I might do it.
Do you remember what the cases looked like for the games?
Yes, of course. The white with the black grid on it, and absolutely.
One moment for the listeners. This will be edited out, but here we go. This is only a handful. I'm a game collector, so we got here Double Dragon.
Oh my God! System. Yes,
we got Fantasy Zone. These are just the three I grabbed. It's super random.
But do you have a Master System player, or you just bought the games?
I have the Master System. I have a Master System,
and it works.
If you ever want to, like, if you're anything like this, like me, this could be a dangerous thing to recommend. But I will shout out my friends over at My Life in Gaming. It's a YouTube channel where what they do is they focus on video fidelity of old game systems. So they will talk to you about all the different video formats, like not just your composite, but like RGB component video. They even break down a little bit how it sends the video signals. So like there are sickos out there who get a PVM, old professional video monitor that you can get from like an old hospital or something, if there's any around still, or like churches even had them, or like actually you out in California, broadcast studios would if they even still have any of those. But you
like
can
a dedicated CRT monitor for video. Is that what you're talking about?
So PVM is like it's a professional video monitor, right? Okay. It's no different than your normal tube. I shouldn't say no different. It's similar to your standard CRT, the tube TVs, but the difference is they are professional grade. So they have the ability to accept RGB input, which is a better quality video signal than the normal yellow, white, and red video signal. That's composite. In a nutshell, when you have, the yellow, white, and red plugs that you plug in the back of the TVs, uh, your video signal is sent on the yellow one. Every single thing about it is all the information of the video signal is sent on that yellow wire. RGB, it takes that video signal and splits it into 3 different
Right.
wires, so it can carry more data to the TV. So in essence, you get a better quality video signal,
and you can tell the difference.
You can tell the difference.
Wow.
If you don't want to track down a PVM, there are things called upscalers where you can basically, modern HD TVs aren't built to handle the resolutions of those old systems because they were 240p, and most TVs are what now, at least 1080 to 4K. Right. So it's like taking that tiny little 240p image that would normally fit maybe a quarter of the screen, and it stretches it out for the whole screen. So it makes all your old games look worse. And there's input delay because it has to do calculations to fill in the data that's missing.
Oh, see, this is the stuff that scares me about getting a Sega Master System.
So no, I'm just saying, like, if you want just bare bones, you can find something that's there. Like, you can find an easy, video to HDMI thing, and it'll there's cost effective ways to tackle it if you want to go down it. If you're looking to be a sicko, My Life in Gaming is like the channel that will, like, for better or worse, change your brain chemistry on how you view a bit.
Well, like, Josh, I'm prepared to admit I'm a sicko in a different way, because you were talking about those cases, and this is not a stealth way for me to plug something else I've done, but I'm sending it to you in the chat. My band and I did a song, and I was making this series of videos where you can, like, it's kind of like a machine that plays this almost like sort of like 8-bit dot matrix graphic display of what's going on in the song. And I did one solely based on the cover of a Sega Master System game. That's great.
I love how, like, see, I'm not the look of these things. I think the grid is really cheesy, but I love how it's so uniform. Like, it kind of, like, it's charming at how much I'm not, like, it's not my personal taste, but I also find it charming at the same time, if that makes any sense.
I loved it. I just loved that they had consistent branding. And I'm in high school at this point. I should not care about that kind of thing. But to play, Alex Kidd, and it looks the same as another game I love. Did you ever play Zillion?
Yes, actually. Yes, because I covered it on the podcast 2 years ago. My patrons voted for it. I watched a little bit of the anime as well. Did you ever watch the anime?
No, I was dying for it, because when I was a kid, that stuff was not available. We had, like, some of the basics like Macross and Appleseed and Akira, but trying to get something like Zillion was virtually impossible. So I was obsessed with anime, and this was as close as I could get to play the game. I loved it.
Let me see if I still have my notes for it, because the anime has some, it's fucking wild, the stuff that they talk about in that anime. I'm going to see if it, because this was like 2 years ago. So I'm, like, scrolling through all of my Google Docs notes to see, where are you at? Do I still have you somewhere? I'll see if I can find it, but it's really amusing, because the anime has some, like, I forget exactly what it is, but it's basically Zillion is like a special weapon to fight against some bad aliens, and the unit that your character is from is like the Dark Nuts or something like that. It's like some really anticlimactic name for something so cool looking, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. But if I can find it, I'll bring it up again. I would love to keep talking about games, because that's my show, and I'm glad we got to talk about it, because I did want to ask at least a little bit of it before we ended, since it is a gaming podcast. I wanted to ask you kind of more on your, I guess, about specific questions about podcasting in general from your personal experiences. Since you've done a lot of podcasts, what has podcasting taught you that you've been able to apply to other, I don't want to say, I guess, art forms, because you have your hands in a lot of different pies. So you spin a lot of plates between music with Townland, between, obviously, I know you don't do a lot of acting anymore. It's kind of more on offer based from what I've been reading. But between music in Townland, between your graphic design and, like, home decoration and stuff like that, has anything that you've learned from podcasting have you been able to apply that to other interests of yours, I guess, that you take seriously?
Yeah, I think I've learned a lot of kind of just how to listen doing podcasting, how to just shut up for a while and take in what someone's, not just wait to speak my next turn, but just to kind of take that in. And that has helped so much with music. And I think I also learned that by sometimes over speaking, which is kind of what people tend to do on podcasts, especially when they're starting out, because you think you just have to fill the air and you have to have something poignant to say. And sometimes just shutting up is the best thing you can do. And in fact, to demonstrate that, I'll do that right now.
No, I very much resonate with that. I've talked to people before as well about how like waiting for your turn to talk is one of the hardest things to get rid of, like one of the hardest like habits to break. So I can very much relate to that. This one's a little bit more in depth, but I've been curious about this, especially from someone like you who has been on the internet for as long as you have, like very active and like a big part of podcasting for so long. The parasocial nature of podcasting, and I've been wondering, like, do you feel like podcastings are more parasocial than other media forms, other mediums? And if so, like, how has that affected you? I was joking around before. I was like, this is a little awkward. I have this Rolodex of like random podcast appearances of yours. I understand how that could come off as like super weird. So like, have you ever experienced like the positive and negative sides of parasocialness, I guess, through podcasting?
Yeah, I think it's an exponentially more parasocial form. And 99.9% of my interaction in both ways has been very positive. I think I fully understand why that's the case. I've spent so much time talking on a mic about my interests and, my life in some way. I completely understand that anybody that has taken a shine to whatever it is I'm doing would have that stuff in their understanding of me when they talk to me on the street and stuff like that. So it does not weird me out at all. I'm very flattered, and I still kind of find it a little baffling that people find it interesting, because prior to podcasting, all of this stuff, all of my like various interests and kind of nerdiness existed almost as not an embarrassment, because I've never been that type of person that's been embarrassed by it, but a kind of thing that I had to like release in slow doses, especially moving in social circles and especially in dating, because when I grew up, there was no like, nerds were not in vogue in any way.
No.
It really was like Revenge of the Nerds. And there was a kind of frowning down on it. So I was never the type that hid it, but I never wore it on my sleeve. So podcasting was I was just kind of waiting for something like this to come along, because even with Superego, a lot of our subjects are nerdy, but we're not talking about nerd culture or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the important thing is we didn't think anybody was listening. So we were just ourselves 100%. And then by the time people were listening, it was too late to change that. And that taught me how to find my voice, for better or worse. And I'm so grateful for that. And I love talking to people who have listened to my podcast, because they always have some interesting insight that I can't understand because I'm not coming at it from that angle. So it's very fun. Yeah.
That's cool. I because with the parasocial thing, like I remember Kevin Smith talked about this on one of his older podcasts, but like how for a while TV was like that parasocial medium, because you're inviting people into your home. You're inviting these actors into your homes. And podcasting, I felt like, was just this next evolution of that, because you're taking people everywhere. Whoever you're listening to, they're with you on the bus, they're with you in your car, they're with you as you're doing chores. I
would add to that too, that not only that, but you're listening to them usually in not only something that's right in your ear, so it's so close to your ear and your brain, but by definition of an earphone, it's cutting out the rest of the world. So you're almost locking yourself into isolation with them. And I've had parasocial relationships. I've developed a great friendship through me being a fan of Jay Cheel from the Film Junk podcast and all those guys. And it was just, I was just listening to them and enjoyed them. And then we ended up talking online at one point, and then now we're friends, and I'm very grateful for that.
I think that's one of the cool aspects, because I do think what's fun about podcasting is you get to know, unless the person's not being genuine, which I feel like it's a lot harder to be fake when you're talking casually for hours upon hours upon hours. Like you can only hold on to that for so long. That
you run out of fake, unless you're an absolute sociopath, which God, I hope that's not the case.
I mean, there's probably some out there. I could probably think of a few podcasters, but I won't name any names. Completely separate gears from the parasocial stuff. That's just something I find interesting. So I wanted to pick your brain about it as someone who's been podcasting for a while. What podcast have you helmed that was which is a podcast that you have either created, co-created, helmed, or created, whatever, or worked on that was more challenging than you expected, or in vice versa? Was there one that you worked on where you thought it was going to be challenging and you're like, oh my gosh, this was so much easier than expected?
The two that I could think of, other than like navigating the working with a known celebrity entity like Conan, like taking him out of it, just the kind of import of that and walking into a medium that I normally think of as something you can literally have no rules with, going in and doing that where it felt like, no, this has to land and it has to be right. It felt more like developing a TV show. In my limited experience with that, it felt way more like that. And there were so many people involved with it. It was the exact opposite of my understanding of podcasting. Luckily, they were a wonderful group of people, so it all worked out. Superego became difficult only because as our listenership grew, I really just cared about the editing and the sound design, and it was more of a self-imposed thing purely because it mattered so much to me, and I felt like I was making something I just loved. And then one that was difficult was Keys to the Kingdom, and I can tell this tale now because so much has changed, but when we first did the deal, it was right when COVID had started and we were having pitch meetings over the phone with Amazon. As you know, I'm so used to doing independent production and publishing of podcasts, maybe
not having to ask
network
permission for anything, just doing.
Yeah. And so there was this wonderful executive there who knew of my wife and I and got our humor and our tone and our style, was big into like kind of looking behind the curtain of what it's like to work at Disney. He gave us the deal. It was a wonderful just way to start the project. And then this is also the first time I had used agents for a podcast. Getting the deal done took a year of negotiation, which TV shows don't take that long. We were blown away. Now, part of it, I think, was because of COVID and everybody's head was just addled and stuff. But by the time the deal got done, there was a new executive in place who was a former like nuclear arms specialist. And she was a very nice person, but she was so nitpicky and didn't get our tone and our style and what we were going for, and treated it as if it was, like 60 Minutes, which is something I have great reverence for, especially in today's news. I love journalism more than anything.
At the time of this recording.
Yeah. But other than getting our facts straight, we were not after hard-hitting journalism.
Yeah.
We were after a fun, lighthearted look at all the ridiculous stories about working for theme parks. And so we went through the ringer on notes down to like interjections of words needing to be deleted and things like that. And so then we did all this work. This was right after our first child was born. It was such a tumultuous time. Yeah. And as soon as we finished all the episodes of the podcast, they had paid us all the money. They said, we're drastically rethinking our podcasting division.
Of course.
And we're not going to use it. But the good news is they said, you can have it. So they paid us for it and they gave it back to us. And then we just ended up tweaking it a little bit back more into our voice, but also strangely enough, having a little bit of gratefulness for some of the notes that they had given us. Like they really tightened it. And then released it on our own, and we're able to kind of do a second earning out of it. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of Wilco's record, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. They had a similar thing happen to them where the label didn't like it. They gave them the money and they gave them it back, and they were able to sell it to another label who just happened to be an imprint of the greater label. So the same company paid for the album twice. And it's just that to me was indicative of how ridiculous the podcast industry became at one point and how bloated, and now it's leveling out a little bit more. I mean, it's definitely like there's a class divide between exposure and stuff like that, but I don't know. I try to stay a little shy of all the industry politics and understanding, because that just kind of kills my love for it. And already doing so many podcasts, I get burnt out as it is. But anyway.
Well, and podcasting is supposed to, like, I understand when you do it, it's professionally, it's different, but like ideally you want it to be fun. Like you're having,
there's no other point. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the whole point I have for this, I've actually talked about this on, I do live streams with a friend every Tuesday. We have a little mini talk show called Talk Tuesday. And it's just us bullshitting for like an hour. It's nothing special, just something fun. But I brought it up there recently where it's like, sometimes I get in the mindset of like, being fixed on like certain metrics with my show instead of what the most important thing is, which is the conversations. Like I'm loving this conversation. This is what I live for, like having a really fun, casual, yes, I'm asking questions and it's a structured conversation, but like that's what I live for. That's why like I do deep dives on individual games. I like taking a game and like kind of tearing apart a little bit, not like derogatorily, but like picking at the edges and be like, all right, this is what I like about this. This is why this mechanic works. This is why this doesn't. Yeah, deconstruct it. That's a better way to put it. Yeah. So I just don't understand necessarily like the guys to get into it just as, if it's not fun, then don't do it. Like, I don't know, especially like I don't know. I think it's what I've enjoyed about your work too, is that like you kind of, I don't know all the reasons for some of the podcasts that you've started and then stopped. Whether
I don't either, Josh.
But like sometimes it's smart to walk away when it's either A, your heart's on it, or B, just life, like stress, schedule. Like there's other things you have to prioritize. And even if your heart would still be in it, if you can't prioritize it, that also kind of is another indicator that it's a smart time to walk away. Not related to walking away, but to a podcast you referenced already, Keys to the Kingdom. For those who don't know, it's actually, why don't you, for my listeners, for those who don't know what it is, could you explain what the podcast is?
Yeah, really quickly. My wife and I both worked for years as performers at Disneyland. She was a princess and I was kind of an improv performer. We also we never met there, but we met doing improv at Universal Studios. And so we interview people who have some of just the most batshit crazy stories about the absurdity of working for a company like Disney and the other theme parks as well. Even with that, like Halloween festivities at Knott's Berry Farm, stuff like that. There's just, each episode kind of has a theme and a topic. It's 8 episodes. There's bonus episodes as well. It was really fun to do. And it is like Superego and this are uncharacteristically, or maybe characteristically, I don't know what, but they're the way more structured, tight, sound designed, edited, almost docu-series podcast. Keys to the Kingdom is anyway. And it was really fun to do. It was a lot of work, but I'm really glad that we now have it.
I've listened to the first episode of it because in preparation for this, like admittedly, the shows of yours that I've listened to the most are James Bonding, Pistol Shrimps Radio. I will listen to all of Mallwalkin. I love Mallwalkin. I might, after we're done recording, I might do a little like post like recording to say, hey, these are what these podcasts are about, since we're referencing so many. So I might create like a primer for the listeners afterwards. But
that's nice of you to say. Actually, Mark's coming over after this for us to do some work, and we're talking about resurrecting that and in different versions, like something called doll walking, where we walk with my child in a carrier around the neighborhood. So we'll see.
Something I found funny. It's related to Keys of the Kingdom, but this feels like something Andy Daly would do on Bonanas for Bonanza, where he'll like pick an actor and go down their IMDb page and like find all the weird stuff they do. When I was trying to find the show again, like in preparation for this, I was like, I searched in my podcast app, Keys to the Kingdom. Did you know how many other podcasts are named that as well? Have you ever paid attention?
Yeah, we had to look it up. I don't know how many there are, but at the time there was at least one.
There's I just find because there's other podcasts called Still Loading as well, so like it's unfortunately a thing with podcasting, but I found it amusing. The first one I found, Keys to the Kingdom, it's a Bible podcast that started in 2018.
That's the one we are aware of. Yeah.
Then there's Keys to the Kingdom, which is a Kansas City Chiefs podcast with over 1,000 episodes, but most of them are only 1 to 2 minutes.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Very strange format. I don't understand that at all.
Amazon tried to get us to not use that title, and
really,
we fought for it. Yeah, I can't remember what
title. It works.
Alternatives were. Yeah, it really worked.
And the last one I have, because I'm not going to list all of them. We'd be here for not actually that long. Most of them are just different variations of it. But the Keys to the Kingdom is a Disney-inspired Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
Oh my God, I'm not aware of that one. Wow.
It started 6 years ago and is still technically ongoing. I was just going down. I'm like, this is just weird. Like, what are the odds? And surprisingly enough, Still Loading, if you look up Still Loading in like other podcast searching apps and whatnot, there's a bizarre amount of Christian ones for that too, though I don't understand. Like, really? Keys to the Kingdom, I hear the
yeah.
But Still Loading, I'm like, I don't quite get that.
It just implies like I'm finding God, but he's not fully in me yet. I don't know. We'll see.
Get 1,000 things like, has your podcast loaded yet? And I just reply with can't stop, won't stop. It's never gonna be stopped loading. Funny story about the name, and then we'll do our wrap ups for this, so I can get you out of here on time. I on my Facebook page for the podcast, I'm not really that active on it, just kind of as a dumping ground from Instagram, but periodically, for some reason, there's a large contingent of followers on there that claim they work for Still Loading in some way, not the podcast, but just Still Loading. Like, they'll have works at Still Loading. They'll have some weird symbols and stuff. So I think there's a large contingent of random people from across the world that think like I'm some type of computer, like some tech type of thing. Because I got a DM from a person asking me, they said, "Excuse me, do you have any binary code?" Or sorry, no, excuse me, could you teach me how to hack? And I went, no, I can't teach you how to hack. And then they go, do you have any binary code? And I'm like, what the fuck kind of a question is that? What do you mean? Really here's some ones and zeros. Sure. Here's some binary code. Very odd. Okay. There's going to be a semi-special guest to wrap up this episode, but my final questions for you before that guest may interrupt or not. I normally end the episode with 2 different questions. I'm actually cutting it down to one. And this question is an ongoing series for all my interview episodes called Questions from Courtney. Questions from Courtney. Courtney is my wife, and famously to my listeners, she knows nothing about my guests. She's not into any of the same things that I am.
Well,
into.
I know a lot about Courtney, so I have some questions.
There we go. I'll have to pass them along to her then. So she always sends me a series of questions of like just random stuff, and I always find that interesting. So this episode's question from Courtney: what is your favorite smell, Matt?
For me, it's hard to beat a Christmas tree.
Ooh, okay, I like that. Like an evergreen
coffee
type of thing.
Yeah, I love coffee. I drink coffee, but I love coffee smell even more than the taste. And
I am actually with you on that. I don't like. Yeah. So the coffee I've been drinking throughout recording, it's actually just regular with hot chocolate mix because I can't have just.
Wow.
I'm out of it. I usually get hazelnut and I put hot chocolate mix in it. So it's like a hazelnut mocha. So you don't need to put any sugar or cream in it. It's just the hot chocolate mix acts as all of it.
So you're just having like a mocha shake every day.
If I'm drinking it. Yeah.
So you're playing Sega Master System games and having a mocha shake every damn day of your life. You're living.
I feel it. It tastes very good. I highly recommend it. Just your favorite hot chocolate mix with some coffee. It's an easy mocha. Now, before we go into our final plugs and outros, I have a very special guest that might be joining us, Matt. I believe coming on today, surprisingly, out of nowhere, is Ian Fleming, famed author of James Bond. Ian, how are you doing today?
Oh, say there, old boy. How do you do? I turned back on you with a tip-tap terrio. That's called the old Brighton reversal.
Ian, I'm delighted you could be here today. I can't believe you're speaking from, and you are aware that you have passed, correct?
What's that now? Passed away? Gone? No, it can't be. I've still got bukes to write, novels.
Oh man, hopefully you're not hopefully you're not getting confused here with HR Geeker.
Now, tell me, nobody's written any James Bond novels or made any movies since I passed away in 1964?
No.
Good.
None. Though, Sean Connery recently stopped being James Bond, as you know.
What?
Yeah, so I in order for us to continue this on, I wanted to ask you who would be your choice to be the next James Bond actor?
Well, this is actually very true. I always wanted someone that looked rather like Hoagie Carmichael. You know, the torch singer sitting there at the piano. Or someone like, I don't know, Noel Coward, Cary Grant. Are they still kicking?
Oh, they're kicking something for sure. I'm sure we can talk to the producers. Yeah, I'm sure we could talk to Cubby and see in some way and see if we could get them involved.
I'm all for it, old boy. Tip, tip, cheerio, chap, chap, cheerio, chitty, chitty, bang, bang. Chitty, chitty, bang, bang.
And speaking of chitty, chitty, byang, byang, if you could have written, apparently there, since your passing, there has been a sequel written of that. Oh my gosh, there's been a sequel to that written, but which just seems blasphemous to me. So if you could have written this sequel, like, what would you have done with it?
Well, did you know, I think I would rather like for Chitty Chitty Biang Biang to go up into space. Perhaps among, I don't know, the large Mons Elliptis mountains of Mars, or the Oort cloud, or the icy rings of Saturn. Perhaps, I don't know, the sky, nay, the outer atmosphere, nay, the low earth orbit, nay, outer space is the limit.
I only have one more question for you, and I can't thank you enough for setting aside.
That's okay. I have only one more answer. Yes, please go.
If you could direct a movie based off one of your James Bond novels, which movie would you have directed or want to direct?
Well, I think it would have to be The Spy Who Loved Me, because as you know, that is already, I'm told, has been made into a movie, rather blasphemous, but part of my deal with the Cubby Broccoli was you can have the title, but you cannot have the story, because the story concerns a young woman for the most of the novel, with no James Bond to be seen or heard for pages upon pages in most of the book. But it concerns this woman having her first sexual experience, and who better to write about that than an aging white member of the British Empire?
Ian, you're a treasure. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Maybe I'll get you back at some point, and we can collaborate with, I don't know, some other dead British author. We'll see. Maybe J.R.R. Tolkien will show up at some point.
I look forward going toe-to-toe with that tit.
What did I miss?
Oh my gosh, Matt, you won't believe it. Ian Fleming was just here.
Oh no, again, this always happens when I leave.
It does.
I swear he plans it that way.
I mean, I didn't even hear you leave. I just looked up and suddenly you were gone, and there was this shape-shifting phantom that kind of vaguely smelled of cigarettes even through the internet.
Yeah, I had a package came to the door and I went to get it.
So we're going to wrap up this episode, Matt. Thank you so much again, man, for joining me on this. I really appreciate it. I love the work that you do. I always look forward to new podcasts that you have coming out. So for my listeners, where can the good people find you online if you are to be found online, and what would you like to promote?
Well, I feel like I've done nothing but promote things here, so take your pick. If there is new Superego out for the 20th anniversary. We already have a new episode out there. There's more coming this year, so you can go to gosuperego.com, or you can just find me on Instagram at Matt Gourley.
All right. As for myself, you can follow me on Blue Sky at stillloadingpodcast.com over there, on Instagram at stillloadingpod, on Twitch at stillloadingpod, where I stream whenever the hell I'm able to. Just depends on my schedule. If you like the show and you want to support it, the easiest way to do that is give it a 5-star rating or review on whichever podcasting app you use. It helps more people find the show, and it pleases the algorithm gods or something along those lines. You can also support the show over at Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For only $1 a month, you get all the episodes a little bit earlier with better audio quality, as well as access to patron voting rights, which help guide the direction of the show. There's also a $3 level where you get everything at the previous year, plus access to patron shoutouts, which you heard at the beginning of this episode. For $4 a month, you get the 2 previous tiers plus 2 mini bonus episodes. And for $5 a month, you get everything. All the previous tiers, plus access to my monthly movie podcast, which its name changes depending on the theme of the movies I'm watching. It started off particularly apropos to my wonderful guest here. It was called Still Bonding. It was all the James Bond movies covered. That was a lot of fun. Then we went to Still Family. We covered all the Fast and Furious movies. And now we are up to Still Muppeting, where it's the only Muppet movie podcast where me and a bunch of friends play the music, light the lights, and we talk about the Muppets on Still Muppeting tonight. And that is all over at patreon.com/stillloadingpod for $5 a month. And yeah, that's about it. That's all I got for this episode. That's all I got for episode 400. Matt, thank you so much again for joining me.
My pleasure. Congratulations on 400 episodes, Josh. You did it.
Woo, burr, burr, burr. I don't know if I'm going to keep that in. No, thank you once again, Matt. And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time. Hello, listeners. As I promised there at the end of the episode, I was going to do a little primer on some of Matt's other podcasts, and that's what I am doing here. Now, he has a lot. The man is a very busy man, as you heard in my chat with him. So I'm not going to be able to looking directly at all your wonderful faces through the camera. I'm going to have to be looking at his work over here. So Matt has done a ton of podcasts, like we said, just listing it straight off his website. You have with Gourley and Rust, which is his horror movie podcast with him and his buddy Paul Rust. They go through a whole bunch of horror movies, and I've listened to a bunch of that. I really enjoy it. Superego, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. That is the one that's an improvised sketch comedy show. Fantastic. As we talked about a whole bunch, all of his shows are great. So go listen to all these. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, which he is the co-host and producer of. Mallwalkin, which is him and his friend Mark McConville walking through malls and just talking about their experience walking through a mall. They do it live. It's really fun. I Was There Too, where Matt sits down with people who had small roles in famous scenes of cinema history. So, for example, in Star Wars, when Obi-Wan Kenobi goes, "These are not the droids you're looking for," Matt is the person who tracked down and found the stormtrooper that Obi-Wan said that to, and chatted with him, about his experience. Pistol Shrimps Radio, where him and Mark McConville did play-by-play for women's rec league basketball for the team, the Pistol Shrimps. Super funny. Go check it out. Keys to the Kingdom, which we talked about in this episode. Him and his wife Amanda interview people who worked at theme parks. Bonanas for Bonanza, which is a lot harder to describe if you don't understand the bit, but Matt is the co-host of it with the host Andy Daly. Both of them are in character, as doing improv in character, but their characters are doing a rewatch podcast of the old TV Western show Bonanza. It's really funny. It's amazing. Go give it a listen. It's great. And then James Bonding, which is one of my personal favorites. As I mentioned in the episode, it's how I first discovered Matt's work. Big James Bond fan, obviously, so I had to listen to that. He also has a podcast called The Complete Man, which I can't find online anywhere anymore, and the link on his website is dead. But from what I remember, it was kind of like a satirical thing of like 50s husband type of stuff. I could be a bit wrong, so take that with a grain of salt. But those are all his podcasts. I want to thank Matt again so much for coming on the show. I know this episode is a little bit shorter than most of my other ones, especially for a big episode like episode 400. But I wanted to get Matt on the show more than anything. I told him a little bit there. I kind of didn't lay it on as much as I might have. Otherwise, I didn't want to I just didn't want to come off as weird. But Matt is truly one of my biggest inspirations as a podcaster. And as I said at the top of the episode, I'm looking to do things that are more personal for these big milestone ones. So episode 400 is a big milestone, and I'm so honored and grateful that Matt gave me some of his time for this. And I'm grateful. It was so much fun to chat with him. I hope I can get it back on the show for something else. I just thank you again, Matt. I don't know if you're going to see this or hear this after the fact, but I really appreciate you giving your time and looking forward to everything you do next. But that is actually it for this episode, listeners. Thank you all so much for listening. And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time.